So the book is Outlive by Peter Attia.
There's the 60-year-old that's running marathons and the 60-year-old that can't get out of bed in the morning. Same chronological age, very different biological age. Health is not a default setting, it's a proactive pursuit. And we chase it with three essential pillars: how we eat, how we sleep, how we live. If we're snacking all the time, we keep filling the fridge and we never get to the freezer, and so fat stores just go up and up and up. There's no other intervention that can have as big an impact on health span and lifespan as exercise. When it comes to sleep, the issue is testicles.
There's definitely a theme in the stuff that gets your attention, Michael.
Welcome to the Non-Fiction Book Club.
It is my great honor to have Dr. Michael Mol as our guest today.
The honor is mine, John. Thank you very much.
Well, wonderful to have you here. I've always loved this concept that the most interesting people are an intersection of two very unusual roads. And I think you're a great case in point. So, Dr. Michael Mol, as you can tell from the title, is a trained trauma doctor. That was his first road. He's spent his life understanding how we can live healthier. But then in 1996, he kicked off his second road when he, on a whim, applied for the Mr. South Africa competition, which he duly won all the accolades and all the Oakley sunglasses that came with that. And that kicked off a second path into entertainment. And for over 10 years, he traveled the world as a top billing presenter. He turned that into having his own show. He has launched a number of entrepreneurial ventures, from a telemedicine venture to a values-based streaming network, and a host of other things as well. But what I'm so excited about having this conversation with Michael today is he's curious, he's thoughtful, and he's got such deep expertise in some of the topics we're touching today. So Michael, thank you so much for being with us. It's brilliant.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for the deep research. I remember that night that you talked about the Mr. South Africa. I remember my father coming to me on stage. Hey, here's his son, qualified medical doctor. I know my dad dug deep into his pockets to make that happen and make that a reality. He gives me a hug and he goes, "Well done. What have you done?" It's just this classic, "Come on, man, you're a doctor. What is this?" And it was a question I didn't quite know how to answer either. And it, as you say, took me on a wonderful, different path. Two roads diverged, and it's been a fascinating road. So yeah, thanks for the memory, trip down memory lane.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting as we discuss today's book and how it flows together, because I think the different things you bring certainly affect how you've received the book. So the book that we're discussing today is Outlive by Peter Attia. He calls it the science and art of longevity, though I think it's so much more than that. So when you said you were up for talking about this, I was very, very excited. I think it's a brilliant book. Do you want to talk about a little bit about where you were at on your own journey when you came across this book?
Sure. So John, it started a year before I was born. Actually, seriously. I mean, I know that's a bit of a silly statement, but I get my name from my uncle Michael, my mother's brother, who was a 23-year-old medical student at the time, driving back from the hospital one day, pulls his car from the side of the road, massive headache, stroke, and dies. I'm born a year later, I get his name, and that's the reason I studied medicine, was to finish what my uncle Michael started.
Dr. Michael 1 and Dr. Michael 2.
Pretty much. I carried his briefcase right throughout med school, this old tattered leather bag with his name anagrammed on the side. And actually, silly story for you, fun story, I went to the same hospital, the mission hospital that he was at when he died. 30 years later, I pitched up for my internship on day one, and the superintendent who was there when Michael Howell was there was still the superintendent. I walked into his office reporting for duty, and he looked up and he almost went white, like he'd seen a ghost, and he went, "Michael Howell." I said, "No, sir, that's my uncle. I'm coming to finish where he started." Wow. It was kind of so. But I tell you that story because at the point of his death, he was a healthy young man. I had no idea there was anything wrong with him. Turns out he had really high blood pressure, something called malignant hypertension, and that's why he stroked and died. And it kind of underpins something that has always been close to me, this concept of just because you're not sick doesn't mean you're healthy. So the absence of sickness doesn't infer health. It just means you're not sick. In the same way that the opposite of unhappy doesn't mean, is not happy. It's just not unhappy.
Yes.
The fact that I've healthy ankles doesn't make me happy. It just makes me not unhappy. What do you think? So, and that's a key concept. And that that I've been preaching for probably the better part of the last 10 years. This whole idea of health is not a default setting. It's a proactive pursuit. We've got to chase it. It's not something that we can expect to have. And we chase it with 3 essential pillars: how we eat, how we sleep, how we move. And then Attia writes Outlive. And I loved the book because it basically took all the science and all the research and that lovely, magnanimous American way of writing. And he just kind of validated everything I've been saying in my small little corner of the universe. I'm like, this is just beautiful, man. And in fact, I might share the story with you later, but he started with an illustration using a lady called Jean Louise Calmar that I've been telling her story for years. And I'm like, there it is. That's the story. So there was lots of like, oh yes, oh, this is fantastic, and really resonated with the book. But above all, it just validated what I kind of inherently knew to be true. This whole idea of health is a proactive pursuit. It's not something we wait until we're sick and then do something about.
So it really feels like, given it's confirmed many of the things you were working on, it's an idea whose time has come in a way. And that, I guess, is also the medicine 2.0 and 3.0. Are you seeing that shift in how people receive some of the messages that you've been preaching about proactive?
Funny enough, yes and no. There's a cohort of society, the biohackers, the guys that are suddenly really conscious, and there's a lot more of them and a lot more awareness these days. Yeah. But there are still people who just don't have the time, don't have the inclination, don't have the money to really kind of pursue that idea of how do I just be healthier. But the concept of medicine 2.0 and 3.0 is really great. And I love the way he plays that out, because I mean, that's what hit me about this book, is I was trained in medicine 2.0. Medicine 2.0 is...
Trauma is the ultimate 2.0.
Yeah. And you need trauma, and you need medicine 2.0 doctors. Without trauma, this is going to be chaos. So there certainly is a place for it. But in general medicine 2.0 said we wait until disease rears its ugly head and then we treat it. Yeah. Your HbA1c, or the measure of your average glucose over the last 3 months, must be 6.5%, and then you got diabetes, and now we're going to treat
Now we go, yeah.
As opposed to medicine 3.0 that goes, no, hang on a second, let's intervene, let's step into that gap way before we get to the point of diagnosis or disease, because by the time your HbA1c is 6.5%, the damage has already happened. So why should we wait until that diagnosis before we can actually intervene and do something? Medicine 3.0. In fact, he starts with a lovely quote in the book from our very own Bishop Tutu, who says, why do we keep pulling people out of the river when we should go upstream and stop people jumping in the river? Yes. Medicine 2.0, medicine 3.0.
I also immediately, as you get technical, the experience I had as a non-technical reader is actually the first half of the book pretty hard going in terms of keeping track of the acronyms, and it was good. It established his credibility. I'm glad you read it as a professional and it sounded credible to you. But really, then by the end of the book, as he starts to pull it together, extremely practical.
And I think he does it on purpose, John, because that does, you use the word credibility. There's so much health content out there. TikTok's full of it. It's just all over on social media. All he's saying is, guys, I've done the science. I've done the research. Right. It's all there. It's heavy, and sometimes you don't understand that. But trust me, what I'm about to tell you is built on what I led with. And so I think the credibility is important. It's just science.
That's so great. I don't know if you've seen him talk about how to spot basically a charlatan on social media or somewhere else with this. He says, anyone who only has one solution for every problem is a charlatan, right? He says, you can't do that. It's too nuanced, right? So yes, sleep is important, but if whatever the problem, sleep is the answer, or drugs, or a particular exercise, or, whatever your problem, this specific type of yoga is the other, anyone with only one solution. And I love that. I was like, okay, that's good. I like a person who preaches nuance, because it's such an unpopular message.
And he does that in his chapter on nutrition. So, and I love the fact that he goes, guys, there's not a one size fits all, particularly when it comes to what we eat. And then he ends that chapter with this beautiful statement. And he says, and if you've read this chapter, and if you are upset with me because I haven't said that your diet is the best diet, then take the book, put it down, and go and exercise, because that's going to give you way more benefit than deciding what is right to eat. And that's a good point. Nutrition, bad nutrition is worse for us than good nutrition is good for us. And again, something that Attia said, but I digress.
No, I think it's wonderful, and this is I think for people who want to go through the book in order, they can read the book. I think the fun part of this conversation is the digression.
How to spot a charlatan when someone goes, in my opinion. I'm like, I don't want your opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I love you and you're a good friend, but don't give me your opinion, John. Give me the science. Tell me what the facts are, because you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. So, what are the facts? As first half of the book.
Well, and I think there are some super summaries of the state of science at the moment, but that's going to be an alive thing, and some things in this book are already somewhat out of date. But there's some concepts and frameworks in this book which I think are so helpful, and one of them was the health span versus the lifespan. You want to talk a little bit about that?
So this illustration I told you about, he tells the story of Jean-Louis Calment. So he's talking about super ages. The oldest documented person ever to have lived, 122. Fascinating, all that. Grew up in France, remember the Eiffel Tower being erected, remembered a mean old man coming to buy paint from her father, a man called Van Gogh. She rode a bike until the age of 100. She quit smoking at the age of 115, felt it was becoming a habit, loved that. But what he doesn't say is on her 120th birthday, they had a big celebration for her. Obviously, officially, formally, oldest person ever to have lived. And she speaks, and she said a couple of things. She said, I realize at 120, I have no peer pressure, which lovely, thank you so much.
No peers, no peer pressure.
Yeah. But then she made this statement, which was fascinating. And I think that probably sums up his book beautifully. She says, if I could live my life over, I would trade a long life for a good life.
Yeah.
Okay. By the end of her life, lost her sight, lost her sense of taste, hearing, all that kind of, the hard stuff that goes with aging. But that idea of quality over quantity, or in geek speak, science speak, I choose health span over lifespan. So lifespan is how long you and I live, okay? Global average, 73. Health span is how long you and I live disease and disability free. Global average currently, 63. So 10 years of hard life, 10 years of what Attia actually calls a slow death. In fact, he makes a statement, guys, you want to die quickly. And when you first read that, you're like, don't take that out of the context. But his point is the average life expectancy of human beings at the turn of the century in the 1900s was 45. They couldn't care about longevity because 45 is, now it's, around 73, 75, certain areas go up to 80. But because we're living longer, we're now suffering more with these non-communicable diseases. We dealt with infection. Thank you, Pasteur and Fleming. But now it's diabetes and cancer and heart disease that are crippling us and spoiling life and nibbling into health span. And medicine 2.0 basically does all it can to extend that marginal decade, that last few years of life, at great expense, at great discomfort, for an extra 3 or 4 blah years, as opposed to, just flying through, having health span. And I keep telling my folks this, guys, because I often say, you're so hard on us. You tell us to do stuff and, I don't want to exercise. I'm going, Dad, I want you to die in a week. Yeah. I don't want you to suffer for years. And, that's not how you want to live. So be healthy, do what I tell you to do. And when the wheels come off, it'll take you a week and you'll be gone. How cool.
I want you to die next week, in many weeks' time.
But probably what I should mention. Maybe get them off my back a little bit.
No, but I think this idea of the marginal decade, he has this thing where he says, very few people know when they enter the marginal decade, the last 10 years of their life, but most people know when they're in it at some stage.
Yeah.
Right. And so in those last 10 years of your life, what are the things you're going to be able to do? Yeah. And I love his idea of the centenarian decathlon. Like, what are the activities that you love to do that you'd still love to be doing in the last 10 years of your life?
I think it's a great exercise to do too, because he says, this is what I do, or this is what I recommend to my patients. But the question to us as readers is, what do you want to be able to do in your 90s? Do you want to be able to still run around, kick a ball? Do you want to be able to pick up a bag and put it into an overhead luggage compartment so you can travel? Do you want to go upstairs by yourself? What is it that you want to do? And if that's important to you, then you just backtrack to the age that you are at now. And if you want to pick up a 7 kilogram, bag, you need to be able to pick up a 30 kilogram kettlebell or dumbbell or barbell, whatever the case is now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's me today prepares for the future me. And I think you said it earlier, it was beautiful. You know, the John in his 90s is going to look back at the John in his 40s going, come on, dude.
What were you doing?
You know.
And you know, I love the challenge in the book. I started thinking a little bit about, for me, what are the things that are different? So everyone wants to be able to balance themselves, go to the bathroom. I want to be able to bowl a gentle, non-spinning off-spinner at my grandchildren. Yeah, it still won't spin, but it's a 7 today.
Right. But it's still going to hit it up the park because
the ability to turn your right arm over.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure that I rehab my shoulder properly when it gets injured, as it is, because that's something that I want to be able to do in my last, which for most people, they'll be like, what a strange thing to want to be able to do. So I love that framing.
I remember years ago, a guy came to me and he said, Dr. Mol, I just want you to know I lost 53 kilograms in the last 8 months. I said, dude, I know how you did that. Tell me why. You know, what's the why? And the odd story was, he says, I'm a Man United fan, you know, poor guy. He's never heard of Liverpool, clearly, but I'm a Man United fan and I'm morbidly obese and I've got to I buy the kit every year. I'm that big of a fan, but South Africa doesn't bring in XXL kits, you know, or XXL, only XXL. So I've got to order my kit from the UK. It's expensive. There's import duty. It's rand pound exchange, all that sort of stuff. So it just got too expensive. So I decided this year, XXL, I'm just going to buy the smaller kit. He said, I put it on. I felt so embarrassed to be a Man United fan that looked like that. I went, no more. He says, and 8 months later, I've lost 53 kilograms. I now wear an XL Man United kit. Life-changing. Stupid story for me and for you, but for him, life-changing. So the idea of what do you want to do when you're 90? What's your, what are the 10 things, or, you know, that you want to kind of tackle as a centenarian decathlete? I think it's a great concept.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things he doesn't, I guess, talk much about in the book is this problem with this hyperbolic discounting, the fact that future you has so little power over the current you.
The immediate.
Have you found any ways to crack that as you working with people to help them to, you know, give their future them more voice over their current decisions?
It's one of the hardest things to crack in healthcare. It's this behavioral modification. You know, we talk about atomic habits. You know, we talk about nudging, about moving people, but it's so difficult to get people to change because they just can't picture themselves frail and decrepit. You know, many years. Fear doesn't work. And you know, telling people you're going to have a heart attack or this is going to happen, that's like, I'll deal with it when it happens. I remember as a young doctor in the public healthcare space, trying to explain to some illiterate patients that they were going to get diabetes. And he's like, so? Until I changed that tune to say, you're not going to be able to have an erection. And he's like, okay.
You got his attention.
Yeah, so I don't want that. So tell me how I change that. So it's what changes today that makes me want to be that kind of future. And I think that's where the secret sauce lies. And if we come back to Healthspan, this whole idea of how I feel today as a healthy individual feels good. I've got energy. In fact, one of the things we can do now that we couldn't do in the past, which is amazing, is we can test. We can analyze blood panels and screens. It's amazing. I mean, the stuff we can do now. But my testosterone was tanking a little. Did my test, wasn't below average. It was within normal limits. So in fact, it was below average, but within normal limits. So if I'd gone to, you know, if I'd been that GP, I would like, yeah, we'll monitor that. But no, I'm getting, you know, low testosterone means, you know, low libido, low energy, muscle mass depletes. I get a bit more belly fat. I don't want that.
Yeah.
So what do? You kind of go, no, I'm going to start training. I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to reduce my stress. I'm going to cut out, you know, processed foods, all the things that really nail testosterone. Take a supplement that boosts testosterone, not replacement therapy, not for a while. And all of a sudden my testosterone is above the normal average. Energy back, you know, enthusiasm, focus. That's today. That's not me as a 90-year-old.
Yeah.
That's how I feel now. And if you can land that idea and just get people to understand the new and improved you, that kind of that me on steroids, feels good, sleeps better, shows up for your kids better. That makes a difference. And you're going to be that rock star, you know, 90-year-old who's bowling to his grandkids and taking wickets and, you know.
I think it's about finding, if I hear you, finding for each individual what is going to be that vivid trigger that gets behavior change now? I remember when I came across some research on the link between some forms of diabetes and mental degeneration, I was like, oh, that got my attention in the way that strokes and heart attacks never did.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe each of us have one of our four horsemen that,
Exactly.
I was like, no, I will eat healthy to keep my brain functioning for longer. And that got me to change like that.
As a very personal illustration, my wife, Jackie, her mom's really battled with vascular disease, nearly lost a leg. And it was such a wake-up call for Jackie that she went, I don't want to end up like my mom. I've got that DNA, I've got those genetics.
Yeah.
And for years, I've not been hard on my wife about you must exercise, but it's always the encouragement, and wives never listen to the husbands. But Jackie changed literally overnight, and she's training hard. She's loving exercise. She's a new person. But the trigger, to your point, was I don't want to end up like that. That terrifies me.
It's very personal.
So guys that have had a heart attack, they're the biggest evangelists when it comes to healthcare. They're kind of like, dude, we get it. I'm glad you survived your heart attack, but just, keep your enthusiasm to yourself. That's what I'm thinking. I never say that. I'm like, preach it, brother.
You're
preach
lovely,
it.
yeah. I mean, there's the very scientific bit of the book, and then there's a section which you're going to get to, which is exercise, sleep, and eat. Was there anything new in this book for you, or was it largely an articulation of how you were already thinking about these things?
It was that and more. So I particularly loved his approach to nutrition, because that's always, that's tricky. And who knows what it means to eat healthy anymore. I mean, the medical fraternity has done us no favors. From our perspective, I apologize, guys. It's easy to complete your income tax return than it is to know what's healthy. I mean, is fat good for you or not? Should I have more eggs or not? Or, in fact, that's an easy answer. Eggs, you can have as many eggs as you like. For 40 years, the American Heart Association said, don't do eggs. The cholesterol that eggs are going to raise your serum cholesterol, increase heart attacks, big risk.
I see we've got you on your soapbox.
I'll tell you what.
But I think on this nutrition thing, you give the medical fraternity a hard time. But for me, actually, most of us, I love KFC. No doctor said it was good for me. I eat too much. Nobody said it was good for me. So the debate has been on the margin. Is one glass of red wine good for you or bad for you? Yeah. But no, third glass
to that now.
Nobody was ever saying the third glass was good for you, right? And so I think for most of us, that was a theoretical construct. Actually, we were still struggling to have make the right actions, even for the bit we knew what the answer was.
I suppose. And maybe that's why I appreciate his approach, because his approach, it's kind of threefold. He was saying, so firstly, calorie restriction.
Yes.
Okay. So he was saying, just eat a little bit less.
So good.
Eat less, less inflammation. I mean, there's just all the benefits of eating less is we don't need to eat as much as we do. It's as simple as that. Just, and then he talked about dietary restrictions. So calorie restriction is one thing, just eat less, guys. But the dietary restriction was obviously cut out processed foods, avoid your sugars, your salts. That's not great. But it wasn't to the point of abstinence. It was to a point of allowing your body to be metabolically flexible. So if you can get your body to burn both fat and carbs efficiently, that's really what you want to get to. And you get there by fasting. You get there by, just reducing the amount of processed food you're eating. So that concept was good. And what's great about that is you can take your diet, what you like to eat, KFC, but it depends what culture you come from and what family you're from. But you could take that diet and apply these principles effectively. So calorie restriction, dietary restriction in terms of the type of food you eat. For you and I, over 40, protein is muscle. Protein is muscle, and muscle is medicine. So we have to up our protein. That's an absolute must. But the third thing was time restricted eating, and that we've practiced for a while, and that the benefits there are just phenomenal. I mean, it's the concept. He doesn't explain it this way, but it's quite simple, really. Your body's either storing food or burning food, basically. When you eat food, insulin goes up. And insulin stores food either in the fridge, which is your liver, or in the deep freeze, which is your fat stores. When your body's now wanting to burn that fuel and be active, the first place it burns from is the fridge, because it's easy to get to the fridge. The deep freeze is in the garage, it's under lock and key, it's really hard to get to, And if we're snacking all the time, we keep filling the fridge, an insulin keeps raising up and it keeps taking food, putting the food and taking out the fridge, and we never get to the freezer. And so fat stores just go up and up and up. And what fasting allows us to do is to empty the fridge of food, and then you have to go to the deep freeze and get stuff out the deep freeze to eat. And that's the beauty of fasting. If we never fast, if we're snacking all the time and eating, we're never going to get to that. So I love those three concepts. Calorie restriction, dietary restriction, time restriction was great when it came to eating. The sleep thing, I think his line was, if I stand to be corrected, he says, if you don't get sleep right, every other pillar, eating, moving, connection, is going to have to work twice as hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't a statement he made, it was a statement that Matthew Walker made in the TED Talk. When it comes to sleep, the issue is testicles. Men who sleep 5 hours or less have got smaller testicles than men who sleep 7 hours or more. Fact. Okay? And most men here are like, oh no. Because
there's definitely a theme in the stuff that gets your attention, I think.
I mean, how many guys haven't boasted at the office going, I get by in 5 hours? And when a guy says that, I mean, part of me is like, buddy, I know something about you that you don't want me to. But the principle there is just one night of 5 hours or less, and you get a 15% drop in your testosterone. We talked about that earlier. Crucial for men. And you have to have that kind of thing. Just the principles are really great. I mean, be regular. So same time to bed, same time to wake, Monday to Sunday. We know that. Early morning light was important. I mean, that just gets your circadian rhythm. I'm not sure if you talked to caffeine, I can't remember, but that was really important, was no caffeine within 90 minutes of waking up.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
That's great, yeah.
Because when you wake up, you get a cortisol spike. That early morning sunlight increases that spike. That's how we wake up naturally. If you can have caffeine within those 90 minutes, that blunts that effect. And it means we get the crash at 3 o'clock. It means both cortisol and caffeine aren't as effective, So no caffeine within 90 minutes, no caffeine after 2 o'clock because of its long half-life, Keep your room cool, dark, and quiet. No alcohol. That's actually really interesting. No alcohol before bedtime. So often we have that glass of wine because it makes us feel sleepy and we go to bed and we think we sleep well. But alcohol really kills REM sleep. That's that stage of sleep.
Matthew Walker commented as well.
That's the stage of sleep where your brain just kind of restores itself. It's so important for mental health. And if you can have a glass of wine before bed, it kills that. So he goes into all that kind of detail. And again, it's stuff we know, but because it's led with such good science, and he says it in a way that, come on, guys, I mean, you'd be silly not to do this, And then I think exercise, and I don't want to belay this point, John, we don't have time for all of this, but I think the big thing with exercise is, of all the pillars, Attia reckons this is the most important longevity lever. He says there's no other intervention, pharmaceutical, supplemental, surgical, that can have as big an impact on health span and lifespan as exercise.
Yeah.
10 years to life. In fact, he makes this statement. He says, even if exercise was bad for you, the benefits of what it does for health span outweigh anything that could be bad for you. But it's not bad for you. It's really good for you.
Really good, yeah.
And the measure for him is VO2 max.
Yeah.
So I think that was another lovely statement. He said, before you tell me what you take as supplements, before you tell me any of your interventions from a longevity perspective, tell me what your VO2 max is, and tell me that it's at the 75th percentile of someone for your age and sex. So VO2 max is really important, and muscle mass, grip strength. Those are these kind of two markers.
I mean, one of the things that hit me in exercise is how much emphasis he puts on zone 2 training, which in my arrogant mind had always been the waste of time.
Exactly.
Right? Like, get in, hurt yourself, get out.
Yeah.
And his idea of just cranking on day out.
That's so important. And he also, again, the science. So zone 2 training, and if you don't know what zone 2 training, it's moderate intensity exercise. If you have a watch, it's 60 to 70% of your heart rate. If you don't, it's exercising while you can talk.
Just.
Not if you can sing while you're exercising, it's not moderate. If you can talk, moderate. If you can't talk, it's intense. So, and the importance of moderate exercise, zone 2 training, is mitochondria. Mitochondria are those little factories in your cells that produce adenosine triphosphate. That's the currency of fuel in our bodies. And when you do zone 2 training, you build more mitochondria, more energy factories. And it just means you have so much more energy available for everything, so very key. But I also loved his formula for exercise. So he was saying 3 days a week of zone 2, at least 2 days a week of strength training. So vitally important, 2 to 3 days, just resistance training. And the importance there is, if we're sedentary, we get a decrease in muscle, we get an increase in fat accumulation, and a reduction in our metabolic rate. The kind of exercise that counters those three horrible things is resistance training, not cardiovascular training. So more muscle, less fat, higher metabolic rate, strength training.
There's a less American part of this book. You're right. This is quite an American book with some nuance. Total gear shift when he speaks about his own personal story with mental health and emotional health. And that struck me. I wasn't expecting the book to go there.
And it gave it such reality. I mean, right throughout the book, it talks about not so thin Peter, about how he thought he was in great shape and he was this cyclist and he was this driver and he's just, good at everything. But meantime, he wasn't, and that admission of I wasn't as good as I thought I was, which is the American way, with apologies to our wonderful American friends. And so the fact that he brings up the emotional struggles that he has, the family challenges that he has was amazing, because what he's really saying is, why am I doing all this? What's the point? What's the why? The Man United fan had a why.
Yeah, what's the why?
What's your why? And if it doesn't matter, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, Esther Perel tells him, why do you want to live so long if you're so miserable?
Exactly, yeah. If, the classic line is, you want me to give up wine and food but then if I give up all that stuff, why do I want to live to be 100? That kind of standard stuff. But on a more realistic and heartfelt level, Peter hits that hard. And he just says, it matters that I'm healthy. It matters that I show up fully for my family and for my kids, because they matter, and
wonderful.
And to have that kind of emotional purpose you need the why. I mean, it's a Simon Sinek story from, the last 10 years. What's your why? And I think that's really important.
Really good. Yeah. Well, I think just to pull it all together, I know you've been putting a lot of energy into the space over decades, but also I know can you talk a little bit about what you're working on now?
Yes. So we talked about the 4 horsemen, by the way. Yes. So Attia talks about cancer, neurodegenerative disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and they're 75% of our diseases that get us in the end. But there is one condition, and I asked this to a lot of my medical colleagues, and I get the answer wrong. So I'm hoping you're going to get it wrong as well. There's one condition that is 4 times more dangerous, 4 times greater, is a 4 times greater risk for death than all of those 4 horsemen. Any idea what that condition is? It's not smoking.
Is it driving?
It's aging.
Aging. Oh,
exactly. And that's the reaction everyone gets. Aging. Oh, come on, man. I'm getting old. I can't change that.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm working on at the moment, is this whole idea of there's chronological age, what your birth certificate or your driver's license says, but there's also biological age.
Okay.
There's the 60-year-old that's running marathons and the 60-year-old that can't get out of bed in the mornings.
Yeah.
Same chronological age, very different biological age. And what biological age does, because we can measure it very accurately now, it gives us one metric. So I don't have to measure steps or, my LPAs and those are all good to measure, and we need to measure those things. And you don't need to measure steps, by the way. We max out at 7,500, and the issue is not steps. It's just moving more. So, get that. I'm sidetrack. So biological age is something we can now measure, but the beauty of biological age is we can action it and we can reverse it. We can slow the pace of aging. How do we measure it? Well, here's a device that actually measures it in DNA accuracy. All right, genetics is something else we could talk about. But now we get to measure one thing: how old am I really? And if I'm older than I am, what do I do to change that? If I'm younger than I am, what can I do to enhance that and make myself even younger? And it simplifies things a little bit. It's something people really understand. You're going to get diabetes, you're going to get a heart attack. I'm not sure what that looks like. No, if you now tell them, John, you might be 47, but actually your biological age is 59.
You got my attention.
You need to change that, yeah. And so that's what we're doing. It's kind of just giving people an idea of what their real biological age is, and then unpacking exactly how they can change that, reverse the pace of aging, and be younger then.
Well, it sounds fantastic. I'm excited to see how it comes to light. And I'm signed up, so I'm nervous to find out. Anyway, the book is Outlive by Peter Attia, a brilliant book for understanding how to extend your health span. for your full lifespan so that you die quickly.
Exactly.
Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the Non-Fiction Book Club.
Thank you for the invitation. It's
wonderful.
And what he says right at the bottom there is probably the gist of it, is to live better longer, not just to live longer. So here's to living better and longer, Mr. Bradshaw.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. See you next time. A big thank you to Innate, our sponsor. Innate is the tech platform that the great financial advisors use to manage their clients' admin. So if you want your advisor to be spending more time helping you solve problems and less time on paperwork, make sure they're using Innate. You can find out more at innate.co.za. Sign up to our newsletter at nonfictionbookclub.co.za to hear the latest interviews like this one, get book reviews, and get great discounts on all the books that we cover.